What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, NVIDIA, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down some big news involving Tesla that just came out. What President Trump said that's very important for the whole stock market, what you should be watching for as time goes on the chart for Tesla and the others. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Mumu link. If you sign up and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 25 in total. And deposit $5,000, you're guaranteed 60 free stocks. The offer ends on June 3rd, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So, as far as Tesla's going, one thing that's very evident is the fact that Tesla has this very nice flag that's forming. But for us to remain bullish on Tesla, we need to see this not only maintain the structure, but really see a breakout from that 292 area, which is a very, very tough resistance if you look at the chart here and also like back here. There's been lots of rejections near 292 to 295. So I would love to see Tesla break and hold above that to really get that breakout to push for the 300s. Now, if we get bad news and if Tesla can't hold support over here, there's also that risk of us turning back down, but we need a bad catalyst for that to happen. And as of right now, looking at the chart and how well we're holding up and the fact that we've been making higher lows for the last couple of days, the chart is favoring that there might be a little consolidation move before it tries to break out. And there could be a nice attempt to break out higher for that 300 plus area. So I'll talk more about the factors affecting Tesla because it's going to be greatly impacted by FOMC, lots of services data, and also what President Trump is saying. I think all those things will affect the whole market in Tesla. I'll break those down first, and I'll talk about the chart in a lot more detail. So some good news for Tesla is the fact that they're offering a new lease offer for May of 2025. Tesla has a very compelling Model Y, and as you guys know, it's not only very popular, but what's good about that is the fact that we're seeing a lot of people interested in this. The lease offer is available at about $499 a month on a 36-month lease term. That's very interesting, and this could incentivize more people, so that's good news for them. On top of this, there's been some more news about how we have an insider that just bought some Tesla stock. About $1 million worth was bought by Joe, who's one of, I believe it's the Airbnb co-founders. That's some good news. That's some big news because we're seeing that not only they're trying to buy more of Tesla, but they simultaneously are seeing a lot of anticipation approaching the robotaxi launch event in June. So it's just next month. That's some good news as well for Tesla. So keep that in mind. Elon Musk responded and said that Joe rocks. So awesome news. When it comes to other pieces of news, Wedbush is saying Tesla will outperform the market, which is quite good, at least so far. They're the latest analysts to say that. The price-price ratio has been on a bit of an uptrend because we're seeing some more buyers stepping in. And then on top of this, Mondays do tend to be green about 52% of the time, and Tuesdays are green about 51% of the time. So we do tend to be green more often than not on Mondays. We tend to see more volatility at 2 p.m. and also 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And although May is like a 50-50 month for Tesla in terms of being green, like 53% of the time we're green in May. June tends to be very strong historically. 80% of the time Tesla's green in June. It's a very strong month, so we'll see if that could help the share price. Besides that, I do want to talk about some other catalysts. So I want to mention that the whole market's affected by big earnings and also by what happens with trade deals, especially with China and all these different countries. That's why it's very important to talk about this and know this. So on Thursday, we saw Tesla dump. We saw the whole market dump quite a bit because Apple and Amazon were down after their earnings came out because of fears about the tariffs and such. So initially, the market was down on Thursday after market close. But then all of a sudden, there was big news that came out involving China, who were open to trade negotiations, and the market saw a very beautiful bounce. That's why the market came back in the green. So that's why the market saw a very, very strong comeback. Even Tesla made a nice comeback. The news about how Tesla's board was trying to, about them trying to like get rid of Elon Musk, replace him, that was actually denied by Tesla and its team. So keep that in mind. That is also another good piece of news, the fact that that's been denied and that Elon Musk is said to be the CEO by the board. So there was lots of good news coming up. Let's actually go over some important news involving President Trump. So as a reminder, the White House closed and got rid of a trade tariff loophole for lower valued Chinese imports. Basically, for goods under $800, they were exempt from particular tariffs. But President Trump got rid of that, and he said it wasn't really fair. This affects lots of retail stores, lots of retailers like, we have Amazon, Shein, and many others. So that's very, very important news. As a result, with all the tariffs which were hurting China, China announced they want to do something very, very differently. So China is evaluating an offer from the U.S. to hold trade talks. Excuse me. That is some very, very good news that came out from the Chinese Commerce Ministry. That's why we saw a lot of upside for the stock market. That's very, very big news. President Trump has said in the past that there's going to be a lot of pharmaceutical tariffs coming. He said it's going to happen in a month. He said that back in like back in mid-April, excuse me. So the deadline's coming up in mid-May. So are we going to see another increase in pharmaceutical tariffs? We'll see about that, but President Trump hasn't confirmed anything yet. And so far, the market's pushing on good news involving China that wants to negotiate with the U.S. They also exempted the U.S. from some more tariffs, about $40 billion worth of goods, which was good news for the stock market. Some more good news is that Taiwan said on Saturday that it had finished its first round of real tariff negotiations with the U.S. They were talking about trade barriers, taxes, and things like that. So good news involving Taiwan. There's also news that President Trump is saying that there's going to be potential deals with India, South Korea, and Japan. That is some more good news that came out. So President Trump has been saying this for a while. So we've been getting some good news, which is what's helping the markets. But then we heard President Trump say some new things over the weekend. So when asked about a recession, President Trump said that he does not think the U.S. is in a recession, although anything could happen. But he said that everything's okay and that we're in a transition period and we're going to be doing fantastically. That's what President Trump said so far. On top of this, President Trump did say some things that weren't as great for the markets. He did say that, at least today, that when it comes to the tariffs, some of the tariffs may have to stay because he's saying that he wants to basically incentivize the US to be where manufacturing happens. He wants countries to build in the USA. Why would they build in the US if they get rid of all the tariffs? That's what President Trump has been saying. He also said that auto companies such as Toyota and Ford are announcing plans for additional US plants. President Trump also said we don't have to waste money on a trade deficit with China for things we don't need, for junk we don't need. That's what President Trump is looking at. And he did acknowledge the fact that supply chains can be disrupted. So he has been saying that over the weekend. Now, it's worth mentioning that President Trump knows prices might be going up. He knows that there's going to be effects of his tariffs, but he's telling us it's going to be worth it and there's going to be big deals coming. He's been repeating this for the last couple of days. On top of this, he did say today that he does not want to dismiss Jerome Powell in May of 2026. Although he did criticize Jerome Powell's work, he did say that he does not want to dismiss him. Now, going into tomorrow, it's going to be Monday, May 5th, 2025. Yes, tomorrow morning there might be some Tesla news coming out, so we'll see how that affects things. But simultaneously, look at these headlines. At 9:45, we have the S&P Global Composite and Services PMI reports. Then we also have at 10 o'clock a.m. the ISM services data for new orders, prices, and employment. I do think this is going to cause a lot of volatility, so get ready just to be safe. When it comes to the VIX, right now the VIX is fearful. We'll have to see if this becomes extremely fearful or not. Fear is making up the majority of sentiments. Momentum is also at extreme fear as it's improving, but it's becoming less fearful than before. The put to call option ratio is dipping as we're seeing some puts being closed, and the market remains very, very volatile. The VIX is dipping a bit, but we'll have to see if we can hold support. Last but not least, when it comes to earnings, we have Berkshire Hathaway, which announces earnings and gives us more details before market open. Then we have Palantir, Hims and Hers, and then not to mention Ford also announcing their earnings. So get ready for all of this. On Tuesday, we have Celsius and a few more. And we have Supermicro and AMD after market close. On Wednesday, whoops, guys, sorry about that. On Wednesday, we have Uber and Walt Disney. And then on Thursday, we have Peloton and Shopify. So get ready for lots of earnings coming out. They're not as significant as what we saw from last week, but we'll have to see what this leads to. So with that being said, let's just focus on the technicals from this point on. What do I think is going to happen to Tesla? Well, I want to mention that Tesla has a problem. Every time we're hitting 292, we're rejecting every single time. Now, as we hit 275, we're also bouncing off that because we're holding support. So we're technically speaking, we're range bound right now, right? We push to 292, come back down to 275. We bounce to 292, 275, 292, 275, 292. So we'll have to see, can Tesla continue to make higher lows here like it's trying to do to get that breakout or not? So I'll be watching these levels. Now, one thing that's good about Tesla is when you look at the 4-hour, we have this quadruple bottom. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 bottoms we're trying to bounce here. This is looking like a nice accumulation, and typically these do lead to more upside. Also on the daily time frame, we're looking a bit more bullish. We're in a range here, but if we could try to break above 300, we're looking for a bigger push for these higher levels. So it's looking bullish to me. I think the setup looks quite good. I would love to see us get back above 292 for confirmation, but we are looking in favor of bulls right now on this chart. So let's go over the hypotheticals and I'll break down my predictions. So if Tesla wants to be bullish, if we get some good news from President Trump about the trade deal, if we get a deal with China, this is what you're looking for. Basically, you're looking for the flag to pan out. You want to see some good news for Tesla, and you want to see us basically make a higher low and try to get back above 292 if that breaks. We're looking for an attempt to push for 300 plus or above, all the way up towards like 320 if that breaks. So overall, we're looking a bit more bullish. That is the more bullish case. Now, the bearish case is that let's just say there's a bad piece of news. Let's say President Trump says, oh, we're going to be increasing tariffs again or something, just hypothetically, right? If there's bad news for Tesla, if there's another recall, whatever it is, what you want to see is that you want to see Tesla lose the 275 area near the 200 EMA. If this fails us, we're going to be at risk of seeing not only these lows to be retested, but all the way down towards this imbalance at 261. We're going to be coming back down there if we get some bad news. So what do I think is going to happen? What's the most likely possibility? Well, what I think is going to happen is that I think this flag is going to pan out. I think Tesla's looking more bullish, like I said, but we're not just going to break out instantly. We might see like a little bit of a dip, consolidation between 285 and 292 like this, but then later on, maybe it's after FOMC or something else. This might still try to get that break. As of right now, I think this is a bit more probable, a push like this to go higher. Looking at our setups and looking at what I'm seeing from a technical basis, we do look a bit more bullish on Tesla. So we'll see. Just for confirmation, it also depends on the ISM services data. So with tomorrow, I do think we're going to see some consolidation first. I don't think we're just going to break out instantly. I think that we're going to make a move like this where we kind of like retest 285, come back up to 292. We just kind of consolidate. But later on, we could be looking for an attempt to get to 300. So please keep that in mind. For SPY, we're looking a bit more bullish. We're making higher highs and higher lows in terms of our trend. But here's the problem with SPY. When you look at the daily time frame, what you will see is that if you look at 567 to 57, there's a tough resistance here. So look right over here. We hit 569 rejected, 570 rejected. We did push once to 567, then we rejected. We hit 567 here rejected. So it's a very tough resistance. We might not break it immediately. We might see a move like this where we are still technically in this like rising wedge. Now, if we're bullish, and I'm going to go over the scenarios. If we're bullish, if President Trump announces a trade deal with China, we need to break and hold above 570. If we hold that tomorrow, I'm looking for 575 to retest this high over here. Okay. If we're bearish, if we get bad news involving President Trump or something, I want to see us lose 560. If that fails us, we're looking for a dip below 555. If not, all the way down to 545 if that fails us. So I'll be looking for those as the bearish cases. What do I think is going to happen? My prediction is going to be a mix of both because there's a tough resistance at 567 to 568. What I think is going to happen is something like this where we kind of like consolidate like this. We hit this like 568 area, maybe go a tiny bit higher. Then we might be looking for a small pullback to like 560 to 562 like this. Could we go a little lower to fill this gap? We'll see about that. But then we could still bounce, trying to go for 575 later if we get a deal with China or something like this. And then I do think that there's the possibility of us trying to form a top. So my prediction is we kind of pop a bit, then consolidate. Then we could be looking for more upside later if we get good news. So we'll just have to see how that goes. But that's what I'm looking for so far, a little bit of a push and then some consolidation down here in this range. And we'll see how it ends up going, at least moving forward. So please keep that in mind. That's what I'm looking for on SPY. I'm seeing the same thing on the QQQ because 490 and 494 are two tough resistances, at least historically. If the QQQ ends up losing the support that we happen to have right over here, so I'll be going over the levels real quick. If we lose basically support at 482, we will turn a little bit more bearish and we could see a small dip to fill this gap towards 475. If we're bullish, you want to see us get back above 494. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt to push for 500. What do I think is going to happen? Well, I think it's going to be a mix of both. I think that there might be some consolidation coming to the QQQ because we're approaching a tough resistance as we get very close to that like 494 area. So I think what's going to happen is this. I think that the QQQ is going to see some consolidation over here. Heading into tomorrow, we might see a retest of like 490, a dip back down towards 485, consolidation where this imbalance is, and some sideways price action. But then as time goes on, we could still attempt to go a lot higher by the end of the week if we get some good news involving like a China deal or something like this to push even higher. So we're looking for a move like this for now, unless we end up losing like 478 to turn bearish. My gut tells me we're just going to consolidate and possibly go higher. So watch that very, very closely. For the IWM, we're looking a bit more bullish, but I'm going to be very careful around this 202 area. If we lose 198, we're looking for a dip to fill this gap at 196. If we break 202, we're going to be going a little bit higher. I am anticipating there might be a touch of like 202 or so, then we might be coming down to fill this gap. If we hold above 202, we could remain bullish. And if we lose 198, we're looking for that gap fill at 195 before we potentially go a little bit higher, at least temporarily, to form like a top. So I'm looking for a move like this where we push to 202 and we return to like 195 to fill that gap. Then we'll see what happens after that as time goes on. So watch that very closely. ES, what I think is going to happen is when you look at the daily, we're going to be touching a resistance. Just like SPY, this might go a tiny bit higher, but then we're going to be looking for a potential temporary consolidation move. So to be bullish, you want to break 5,800 to push higher. To be bearish, you want to lose 5,620. My guts tells me what's going to happen is that we push for 5763 towards the resistance here. We could turn back down to 5620, kind of consolidate like this. And we'll see if we go a little bit higher to get back up towards like the 5800 area like that. But like I said before, I think that for tomorrow, like I said, we try to push for like 5760 to 5750. And then we could turn back down and see a consolidation phase just temporarily until we get the FOMC results to see how things end up moving. So with the data coming out for tomorrow, we may get a pop and then a drop and some consolidation on ES for now. And we'll see how we end up reacting as time goes on. On NQ, I'm seeing the same thing. Now, I could be looking for a 200 EMA retest between 20,300 to 20,500. I do think we test that range. Then we could turn back down to 19,700 and consolidate like this. And we'll see if we go higher or lower depending on what the levels look like. There's a gap to fill down here, so you want to be very careful nonetheless. So just keep that in mind. For Bitcoin, there is this 20 EMA down here. There is a bearish divergence, so we'll just have to see how well this holds up. We could be dipping towards this 94,000 to 92,000 area, and we'll see if we bounce off this or not. But I do think we might be retesting our 20 EMA here, and we'll have to see how things end up going, at least as time goes on. So like I said about Tesla, like I said, we might just see a little bit of consolidation first, but then Tesla will likely break out higher if we could get back above 292, and as long as we get good news. So I'm looking for a consolidation phase before it tries to eventually break out like this as the most likely possibility based off technicals and factors like that. So we'll see what happens, but that's what I'm looking for. I just don't want to see us lose like 270. As long as we're above that, we're looking pretty good. On NVIDIA, I want to be very careful because you'll notice something that's not so good about this. When you zoom out, what you'll see is that look at this 115 area. So we have a rejection off 115, 1, 2, 3, 4 rejections there, which is not the best of signs. We need to break 115 to push for like 118 to 120. And if we don't break that, we could be coming down to fill this gap. My gut tells me this might be dipping towards 112.7. If it doesn't hold, we could be looking for that gap fill towards like 111. And then we'll see if we bounce off that later on or not. But I do see a bit of a pullback move coming, so please keep that in mind. For Apple, there's a little bit of weakness here. It could, it could consolidate, even dip a little bit. Then we'll see if we get some kind of bounce. Might come a little bit lower to 202 to fill that gap. There's also a gap around 199. And then we'll see if Apple gets a big bounce and starts to reverse right here. So keep that in mind like this. So we might be looking for a move like that because of this trend line right over here that we could be drawing out. So just keep that in mind. That's also going to be very big for how we end up continuing. So we could be looking for a move like this as time goes on. So keep that in mind, guys. Apple might be seeing a small dip move before it continues to go higher. That's what I'm eyeing, at least for the time being. Looking at Netflix, it's quite bullish right now. We're doing a good job at holding up, but there is a bullish divergence forming, which makes me suspect we could see a small dip to retest like 1140 to 1123. Then we could bounce, and then we'll have to see how it goes from there. For MSTR, it looks a bit more bullish to me, but when you look at the current trend, there's a tough resistance at 400. Might retest 380, then we'll see if we bounce and go higher as time goes on like this. But keep that in mind. We might be looking for a retest of 380 for now. Celsius is showing some weakness. We need to get back above like 35.82. If not, we could be dipping towards 33, and we'll see how it goes. Supermicro is in a range going back and forth between supply and demand. It could be pushing for essentially the 35 area, and we'll have to see if it rejects or not as we trade sideways. So give this some time. I do think this could push for 35, and we'll have to see how it goes. For Palantir, we're bullish. We're looking for 125 as our potential targets. But the problem is that even if it is a bit more bullish, we do have earnings in a couple of, I would say within 2 days, we have the big reaction from earnings. So after market close tomorrow, we'll see what happens also heading into Tuesday. So we'll see if this continues to go higher or not. Rivian looks like it has a tough resistance at 14. It might dip to like 13.4, and we'll see if it bounces. So I'll be watching this very closely just to see how it goes. For SoFi, might be retesting 13, and we'll see how that goes as well. I'm not really expecting much. It might be a little bit of a consolidation move to 13 and dip to about 12.39. But I do see some sideways price action here. Not really much is going on with it. AMD has earnings coming up, so I do think that approaching earnings, we're just going to trade sideways like this, and then we'll see if we break out higher or not. ARM looks a bit more bullish. Might push for 125, and we'll see how it ends up reacting to earnings. We'll see if it hits 125 and then turns back down. That's what I'm anticipating. So a move like this to the resistance right here, then back down and just consolidation. That's what I'm seeing as the most likely possibility. For PayPal, we're looking a bit more bullish. If we hold above 67.5, we're looking for a 10 for 68. If we end up losing 66.5, we're looking for a dip back down. There's a tough resistance at the 200 EMA, so it might kind of like hit this, retest 66 and consolidate. So we'll just have to see how that goes. For Coinbase, we're trading sideways, and this kind of has like a very important looking flag that's forming. So this is looking pretty good, but I don't want to see this thing lose 200. I also don't want to see us like lose 196 in those two ranges. We might come down like this and consolidate. As long as we could hold this, there's going to be an attempt for a breakout, but we need to hold this range right over here for now. If we lose 196, it's not going to be a good sign. I would just love to see us hold this for now before it tries to break out. I also think that Amazon's going to consolidate. If you look at this, it's just been going back and forth for the last couple of days. Might retest 187, bounce back up and trade sideways for now. Meta's looking a bit more decent. It might retest 580 though, right over here in the 585 to 580 range. And we'll see if we bounce or not. Keep that in mind. Microsoft might be dipping towards 425, and we'll see how it goes. Might be coming down here. So give it some time. Google's looking bullish. We're making higher lows so far. We might be retesting 162 to 165, and we'll see what kind of move we make here. It is looking bullish, though. It's looking quite bullish. There's a very, very nice accumulation here. We're also riding support. So I would basically draw a trend line like this. You could draw it out pretty easily. Depending on how you want to look at things, we could draw a trend line like this, and then we'll see if we retest this and then bounce off of it. We might be looking for like a small retest and then a potential bounce off of this to remain bullish. It's looking pretty good in my opinion. GameStop is going to likely consolidate, retest 26.9 for those who are interested. DJT might be looking for 26.5 as a potential target. The VIX, to me, I think what's going to happen is that this might see a little rebound to like the 24 area before it starts to dip. And then eventually it's going to form its bottom here. And then we will eventually see this thing run for like much higher levels like this. So this could signify a small dip in the markets. Maybe the market bounces and the VIX comes down a little bit lower. So a dip and a bounce could be coming to the market. And then eventually this could break out as time goes on. For others out there, we have the 10-year, which is trading sideways, and the dollar is also looking a little bit bullish. So what might happen is the dollar might eventually get a breakout soon. Maybe it consolidates as the market dips and consolidates, but then if the market goes a bit higher, this may either consolidate or even dip a little bit. But then later on, if this does get a breakout from this inverse head and shoulders, that could be a bearish sign for the markets in the future. There's no sign of this break yet, so keep that in mind. So what do I think is going to happen? Honestly, guys, there might be a little bit of consolidation coming to Tesla, but there is potential for a breakout if we get back above 292. The setup is bullish, and I would love to see Tesla break resistance. So we'll see what happens with the tariff talk in the news, but that's what I'm seeing at least for now going into tomorrow. Thank you for listening, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow before market open. Until then, have a good rest of your weekend and peace out.